Have you lost the connection with your higher self? Are you noticing the dis-ease of the outside world? It's time to reconnect with nature and each other and raise our consciousness, vibration, and frequency. Together we can create a world of peace and abundance. It's Spiritual Revolution Radio with your host, Dr. Will Miller.
Hello and welcome to the show today. I have back in the studio Carlie Wall. She is an amazing, she does a lot of things. She takes one-on-one clients. She has her own show on Instagram, really is where I see it most of the time, but I know it's on YouTube, and you're on TikTok, and you're on Facebook. You're on all the social media sites with Consciousness with Carlie. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Today, we're really going to talk about kind of an open subject. Really kind of how we're divided in the world and how we come together in the world and how those things work. And I know on your show on Instagram, I've watched some of your segments, you talk a lot about this subject. And you talk about it when it comes to, say, narcissists and empaths, and you talk about it in relationships. You talk about it in all sorts of things. And you have 15,000 people watching this show every time it's on. So you must be saying something that's hitting the heartstrings of somebody. So tell us a little bit about, just tell us a little bit about your show and why you started talking about this particular subject.
Ooh, okay.
And then go into what it is that you're trying to accomplish through that.
Okay. So I've had my own different little spiritual awakenings throughout my life, right? But they weren't like conscious expansion. They were just, I'm aware that there's something that's more than just Carlie, right? There's something else going on here. And it was actually during the time of COVID, and I wasn't totally like awakened yet into my abilities. But I kept asking the question, what can I do? And the more that I asked that question, the more that I had realized that the only thing that I truly can do is heal myself and focus on my frequency and allow my frequency to touch the lives of others, and then let that be a ripple effect. And if there's enough of us that do this, then we can change the global scale of consciousness, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I really felt empowered, because I'm like, I can do something. And it's all without me having to go anywhere or do anything, right? It starts with me. So I started on this journey, and what really happened was about like 6 months into this, I was listening to The Way of Mastery. And if anybody's heard of The Way of Mastery, or if they haven't, you should. They actually have free audiobooks on YouTube. Look up The Way of Mastery. It's basically a channeled book through Yeshua or Jesus, and it will hit you so hard that you can't deny the truth. And it got to a point where I think I was on the last book, and the love of God hit my body while listening to this. I was laying in bed one night, and it just was like this insane amount of euphoria. And I just remember feeling like I was floating off of my bed, and I had tears just running down my face because the love was so strong. And it was from that day forward that I just had a wisdom that I never had before, because I had felt love so unconditionally that it just guided me everywhere I went.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I had recognized that, all these people that I'm listening to that helped me on my journey, I'm one of them now. I can do this now. And that's when I started. And I was so scared. I remember my first Instagram live, I was shaking.
Mm-hmm.
And I started bawling on camera, and then the camera shut off. I think my guides were like, okay, that's enough for tonight. Like,
They did it for you.
Yeah.
Luckily, they were there to take care of you.
Oh, yeah. I was terrified.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that started about a little over a year ago is when I started my channel. And basically, I was trying to just help teach others who were in the same place that I was, and answer the questions that I kept asking that I felt like I wasn't getting a direct answer to while I was, on my journey. And so that's how I started it. I started with teaching like vibration and frequency, and like, what is a download? Like, you hear download all the time, and I didn't know what a download was. So I'm like, these are little things to help people like kind of ease their mind. But then it just progressed more and more and more into a community. And now my channel really is just a place and a space to bring people together. And I talk, others talk, we all get together, and it's just kind of become a community.
And I've noticed, I've seen some of your older Instagram videos, and I've seen your newer ones, and you have guests on, and your guests have kind of changed over time. Obviously, your frequency has changed because your guests have changed, and you're much more comfortable now. We always tend to be,
Oh, yeah.
It's a great thing about radio here is we're live, and if we screw up, we just screw up. It's just part of being on the radio live.
Right.
It makes it kind of fun.
Yeah.
So,
You're just being you.
yeah. So, all right. So then now let's just talk about the subject of the day a little bit. And how did you get into that subject so deeply? I'm asking all the hard questions today, aren't I?
Yeah. Through experience. Everything that I talk about I can only talk about it because I've experienced it, and I've experienced a higher perspective through it. So, yeah, because I've experienced deep division and abuse, just like anybody else, like we all have our own things that we've been through. And that's when I really started diving into narcissism, because I didn't understand what that was, because I was so jaded by love that I just thought everybody felt this way, and then I kept sugarcoating the abuse for so long until I finally, it got so bad that I was forced to leave. But that's when I started diving into narcissism, and I'm like, wow, this is a disorder. Like, this is a brain disorder. Like, and I had dove more into it and recognized not only that, but it's the theme of our world.
Yeah. I was going to say, really, we've grown up in a narcissistic world with narcissistic leaders who teach us to be narcissistic. So all of us have a bit of narcissism in us because of that. I mean, I don't know how we get around that. So.
Yeah, we don't, because it's our program,
right?
And like I know we've brought this up before, but not on the radio. But just that everybody is born into this narcissistic, programmed matrix. Now, a matrix is not bad. People will be like, "Oh, I'm in the matrix. I need to get out of the matrix." A matrix just means the structured reality. So our current structured reality has been the theme of the narcissist and the empath. And so all of us were born and programmed into this narcissistic world. And so just naturally, we only know narcissism and abuse. That's why we're all adults healing trauma, because we were born into it, And the difference is that you have the narcissist, and then you have all the different layers of narcissism. And then you have your psychopaths and different layers of that. And then your sociopaths and different layers of that. And I don't want to get into it, but I'm just saying that they're different categories of
it would take us
disorder.
The whole show to get into all those, by the way.
Totally different. Yeah. But the whole point is that it's just the theme of our reality, and that every single one of us have been born into narcissism. The difference is that most of us grow out of it and mature out of it and find the empathy, and a lot don't. They don't grow out of it because they've learned that it somehow fills them. They get their validation, they get their supply, and it releases some type of dopamine hit, and it becomes an addiction.
Well, and if you really look at the world we live in today, and some of the narcissistic people that are, say, running the country or the world or running religions or running school systems or whatever it happens to be, the leaders tend to be narcissistic people because they can, how do you put it, put their thought and their feelings on someone else and get something back from that, right? Whether it be financial gain, or which is usually the case, but they also get, kind of this rush, like you say, of achievement that comes from that. Everybody needs to fit into my bubble and think my way and do my way, and that's the only way it is. And if you don't fit into my bubble, then you're the enemy.
Right.
It's this competitive world. We've created such a competitive world. We're divine beings of love brought into a world where we're used, and the things that we really love are things, not people, right? We love things, not people. And it's backwards from where it should be. Most people, like you say, though, grow out of it. Those that spiritually awake learn to be empaths. We're empathic beings. We're divine beings. We were born empathic. I know that you, for instance, use your intuition, which I think is a big part of, say, channeling. I know you channel and have that, that connection through your intuition, through connecting to source, the whatever you want to call it. Some call it the void, some call it, quantum field, whatever it happens to be. Doesn't matter what you call it, but that's where you connect to get those things through the practices you've been doing. So tell us about the narcissist and the empath and what's going on with that right now in the world, in your opinion.
Well, the narcissistic game, it's up. It's up. We've been playing this game for a long, long, long time. How many times can you play Monopoly before you're just like, all right, I'm tired. Can we move on to Uno or something? Right?
Right.
That's how what I believe is happening. And we're at that 26,000 year cycle where it's time to evolve, and we've been stuck in this duality experience for so long. And what's happening is that we've really had to overcompensate. The feminine energy has had to overcompensate the last few years, around 2012 even, but it can go back even to the 70s when things started getting more hallucinogenic, right? That was like a divine feminine energy. Like it was overcompensating itself. We had the hippie era and all
Right.
that. And now we have, the era now where things are just more feminine energy based. You can see it, right? And you can feel it. But it's overcompensating itself, and it's doing that because it's trying to balance out how much of the masculine has been overpowering, the masculine energy
for thousands of years,
right?
And it is. I do think this pendulum that is swung much further than center, right?
Yeah.
It is being overcompensated in a lot of circles, and if you're not on board with that, it is kind of a narcissistic thing. You are ostracized from the world because you don't agree,
right?
So.
Yeah, which brings us, from we're talking about division and duality. That's why we bring up the narcissist and the empath, because that is the theme of this world that brings us the division. But the narcissist, and this is something that I teach, the narcissist is the best teacher. It's the best teacher. I learned so much, and I don't say go be in a narcissistic abusive relationship
Right.
by any means, but I learned so much about taking accountability and creating my own reality through the reflection of the narcissist. Because I loved that person, because it's not the person. That's the person's dynamic that it chose to experience in this lifetime, right? It's not the divine soul that's in there that I love. They're just playing out their own things for karma or whatever they need to do. But the narcissist taught me a lot about accountability and my power. What got me to the point where I was okay with being treated a certain way for so long? What got me to that point? Because the narcissist is just a reflection of my own belief system. You know what I mean? If I was completely in my power and recognized my divinity, I wouldn't have been letting somebody control me for so many years.
Do you think, do you believe in soul contracts? Let me ask that first. So do you think maybe we have to experience some of those things, or you went through your experience because that's a contract you made? You needed to learn that in this lifetime? Yeah. You said it earlier. The world, Mother Earth, is kind of tired of this old game, and it's ascending, if you will. It's moving to a new frequency. We all need to move to that frequency, and I think we have to wrap up these little things we haven't learned from our previous lifetimes, our previous experiences with our soul group. We kind of are in a mode, this is just me talking, but I think we're in a mode of wrapping up all these little lessons that we needed to just know or have a reminder of or experience in order as a soul, as a higher self, however you want to call that, to grow, to learn. And do you think that experience, go back to that question, do you think that experience was something like that you needed? Because you talk about learning so much from it and being grateful for it, really, at this point. You weren't grateful at the time, I'm sure.
Yeah, no.
So.
Okay, so the best way that I understand it and how I believe in it is that we as soul family members in certain divisions, right, different groups and clusters of light, I believe that we intricately design each other's programs. I believe that. And I believe that if I helped design my ex's program, which I believe that I did, it was my job to maze my way out of that design. I created that design. I helped create that design. And his design was to be a part of that and maze his way out, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so I believe that we help because I believe everything's extremely synchronistic and numbers, and that everything's designed a certain way. And part of the game is finding your way out of all of these different mazes. Just like with your parents or with your siblings or with your friends, I believe that we all help design each other's programs, and then we contract to get our own selves out of the maze of each other's programs, because that's where the soul growth is. If I can get myself out of that maze that I helped, and it also is unconditional love when you look at it like that. Oh, I was a part of that. I helped create that design that you are experiencing as a human, as a soul family member, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's out of unconditional love. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with the fact that you're a narcissist and you're a little psycho, especially if I'm the one that helped design that program. So that way, Carlie, the human, could have the experience of getting herself out of that maze. And if it, and I did, luckily at my initiation, I finished.
Well, and as I listen to you talk, without that experience, your soul couldn't grow.
Right.
The only way it could experience that is in this form, of Carlie here.
Mm-hmm.
And in this third density experience. So you have to have those experiences. Those things have to come along. What do you say to someone that you're coaching that comes to you and is just like, I'm tired of this. It's over and over and over again. It keeps happening to me, and I'm just done. I can't do this anymore. What do you say to someone like that?
I just try to remind people their divinity by helping them understand that they have created it all. You created all of it. Mm-hmm. You allowed certain people in. You can immediately take yourself out of it. You can. The only reason why we don't is because of lower states of consciousness, fear, and guilt and shame. Guilt and shame are huge. Fear, obviously, massive. But it's the reason why we debt ourselves to certain experiences, because we don't feel like choosing ourselves is the right thing to do. Because we've been taught in this world, especially, that choosing yourself is selfish. You got to give, 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 give. It's like, well, you can't give from an empty cup, Mm-hmm. And so I just try to remind people that every moment of every day, you're creating your own reality. You get to choose if you're going to stay in a toxic relationship with a mother, with a father, with a child. You are not indebted to anything.
Well, we're taught, though. I mean, my father passed on me. When you become a father, no matter what your children do, no matter how they treat you, no matter what they go through, you're there for them, right? I'm here to take care of them. Mm-hmm. I'm here to help them through their issues. But I think people get that confused on what help really is. Mm-hmm. Because I'm there to help them through their issues, to teach them, to be a parent, that's much different than I think what some people believe that to be. They believe that they have to selfishly give of themselves to that child or partner or whatever it happens to be in their life and keep giving, 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 when really it's to set clear boundaries, to teach, and to find yourself within. Mm-hmm. Because once you find yourself within, then you can just lead by example, right?
Yeah. Yes, and that's exactly what I was going to say with that. Because I've coached somebody on this before as well, where how much are you really helping and serving unconditionally to your child if you're sacrificing self? What are you teaching them? To keep sacrificing self? Like if you look at it in terms of frequency, and you are focused on your frequency and you're enveloped in the love of God, you're naturally going to be more unconditionally loving to your children than if you were to sacrifice self and put self on the back burner. You can't even give them what you think unconditional love is, because you don't know what unconditional love is, because you've sacrificed your very essence to give and to give and to give and to give. And you think you're doing the right thing, but you're not recognizing that through frequency, it's empty.
Right.
There's nothing there.
And really, we really should change our school systems. We should teach our children when they go into elementary school, they should start the day with meditation. They should learn frequency first. The language of frequency should be taught before the English language is taught.
Yeah.
Should be taught from birth.
Yeah.
And the world will change from that alone. It's up to us, right? We need to start doing that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, every one of my children, we talk about meditation a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't until later in life that I learned all these practices, right? And I just did what I was taught to do until then, which was get a job, go to school, do good at whatever I'm doing, support my family, take care of them, sacrifice for them, make sure they're taken care of first, and hide my tears, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not fill.
You know what else?
You don't get to fill.
Yeah,
Right.
no. If you look at it like this, look at how many parents, if not probably all, okay, that give out of guilt. They give out of guilt. Like they feel bad, right? So
Yeah.
they're giving out of guilt. And when you do that, you are literally putting a low frequency emotion out at what you're trying to love unconditionally.
Yeah. Guilt and shame are the lowest of frequencies.
You want to know what
More
happens
than fear,
too?
even.
I know from experience, I've done this to my mother when I was a teenager, is that when you give through guilt, the child's natural reaction is to be in a lower state of consciousness as well. So what do? They manipulate because they know that they can manipulate. It's the same frequency. Guilt, manipulation, it's all a low conscious level. So then you wonder why your child is so manipulative. It's like, well, so are you. You're loving them through guilt.
Right.
They're just mirroring what you're giving.
Absolutely, which is all children can do to learn.
Right.
Is learn from that guidance or lack thereof, however you want to look at it. Not that and I don't fault anyone, because there was no book given to me that said, here's how to be the best dad ever, right? I learned on the job, right?
Yeah.
We all do.
Yeah.
And I look back now, and I often think, my parents were learning at the same time I was learning. And my children were learning at the same time I was learning to be a parent. There is no way to know the best way of doing that other than love. That's the one thing I found. I was told a long time ago, I was going through a difficult part of my life, and one of my mentors sat me down, and he just looked at me and he said, Will, you are trying to control all these situations, and all you really can do is love. You have no control over any of this. You think you can control your children. You can, your daughter who is refusing to go to school, you can punish her into going to school. But truly, all you can really do is love her. And once you let go of all that control, once you let go of the thought that you can make something happen, and you just put love in its place, you'll begin to immediately see things change. Well, I needed that. That was probably one of the best lessons I had to that date as a father, was to learn to just let go and let my children, my daughter at the time, just pay her consequences for her choices, rather than try to control the situation or care what other people thought outside of myself. I was looking outside of myself for validation and control, which is what we do, right? Rather than going within. And the minute you go within, the minute you start healing yourself, then all of a sudden that healing, that's the reflection they start seeing, right? And they change themselves in time.
I think it's so difficult for parents, though, too, because of the fear. Like fear of something happening to your child, like to just let them go and just do. I know my mom's been dealing with this with my younger sister as well. That's why I am so tapped into that. It's hard to just let go and do that. But the more you hold on, the more you suffer, the more they're suffering. Nothing's changing. If you can, like you said, if you could just love and accept, but letting go of that fear, I think, is probably the hardest.
You bet,
thing.
because you think the minute you let go, it's all going to come crashing down, right? we're going to have to take a short break here, and we'll be back in just a couple of minutes and continue this conversation.
We'll be right back with more of Spiritual Revolution Radio with Dr. Will Miller on Radio St. George 100.3 FM.
Love is in the air. On the next Real Music, we'll explore themes from some of Hollywood's best romances: Love Story, Titanic, Somewhere in Time, The Last of the Mohicans, and more. Hollywood in Love, next time on Real Music.
Real Music with Matt Rogers, Mondays at 1 on Radio St. George 100.3 FM.
Hi, this is Christian. Each week I bring you music from different countries of Central and South America. We also spend this time discussing aspects of these different cultures. Join me Thursday at 6 and Saturdays at 3 on Radio St. George 100.3 FM. Oh, the whole show is in Spanish too.
Los espero.
Enjoy Ozark Highlands Radio, Saturday evenings at 9 on Radio St. George 100.3 FM.
Welcome back to Spiritual Revolution Radio on Radio St. George 100.3 FM. And now your host.
Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Will Miller, back to talk some more with Carlie. We were on the subject. We were talking about, children, well, really just relationships between people. And we're talking about unity. We want to move on to unity, which is the other part of this program today, rather than just how we're separated. So, before the break, though, I want to finish that thought. You were talking about dealing with your sister and your mom going through this process right now. Let's continue that conversation, and then let's kind of move that into the unity part.
Mm-hmm.
So,
what about it?
You're like, I don't even remember what we were talking about.
I don't even know.
I do the same thing all the time.
Well, we were talking about the fear.
Yeah, you were talking, and that's what we were talking about, is this fear that people have that if they let go of that everything will come crashing down. It's really not very constructive, but I know that feeling. I still feel it with my old programming all the time as it pops up in relationships with people and friends and my daughters and my sons, and all those things still comes up. That old programming that I thought, you do all this shadow work and you think you get rid of all that old programming, and it pops up on you again.
Right.
We call them triggers in the world today, and there are things that trigger us. But really, doing shadow work isn't about forgetting all that old programming. It's learning to deal with that old programming when it arises, because memory is perfect. It's an innate thing within us. Our memories are there. We get to choose when we want what memories to pull up, and then when those memories are triggered, those experiences, the experience, say, you had in this relationship you were talking about earlier, I'm sure there are things out there that trigger you from time to time. Mm-hmm. And you probably deal with it in a much different way now and look at it much differently than when it first happened.
Yeah.
Which is now, that's how we bring unity into this subject, I think, is by learning to do that shadow work, deal with those emotions, and then now that those emotions come up, understanding them for what they truly were and how they helped us, really looking at them as a good thing as opposed to a bad thing, or from going from pain and fear to love and acceptance. So,
yeah, and I've said this on a different show before, that when you take the accountability for your life and your creations, that forgiveness is inevitable. Because the moment that I took accountability for why I was in the position that I was in, I couldn't blame anybody anymore. And so it was forgiven. Doesn't mean that I didn't go through many painful nights and lots of, tears and pain.
Right.
It just meant that there was an awareness there that was not there before, that was now available for Carlie to go back to for comfort and reassurance that, okay, accountability, right? Oh, he's just living out his design. And, I created my own reality in this situation.
Right. Right. And I want to talk about forgiveness. You brought it up just now, so I want to talk about it for just a minute, because I think a lot of people, at least I grew up being taught that, you need to forgive and forget. And you get this idea of what forgiveness is. I need to forgive that person for what they did to me, and I need to forget about it, and it's got to be all okay. And I don't think that's what forgiveness is, because forgiveness is much deeper than that. Forgiveness truly is about yourself, your true self within you, right? Not anything to do outwardly with someone else. It's coming to what you say, this understanding that whoever wronged you is living their own existence, is living those experiences. What have you taken from that? What have you learned from that? How have you grown from that? And then accepting that. It's really just an acceptance and a letting go of the painful emotions of the things that you're holding on to. Nobody else is. Mm-hmm. I mean, truly, that person could have died a year ago, and you're still holding all that pain and anger inside. No one's being hurt from that but you. Mm-hmm. So forgiveness really is just that letting go of that for yourself from within. And it's very powerful.
Yeah, and people ask me all the time, how do I let go? But I think you just hit it right there, acceptance. When you accept anything, everything else is inevitable. The letting go is in the acceptance. Yeah. The forgiveness is in the acceptance. I'm now accepting what it is. There's nothing beyond that. Acceptance is a big, big deal.
It really is. And until you get to that point, you're still just trying to control the outcome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is, it's a futile thing to do. It's futility. You're never going to make it happen.
Right.
You have no control. You truly have no control.
Right.
And people get so caught up in the fact that I've got to create my reality this way. I work with people in finding their purpose in life. I work with people in finding their worthy ideals. But at no time do I say, this is a goal set in stone, and this is how it needs to turn out, and this is what you need to dwell on every day. Because dwelling on something that is in the future, mm-hmm. and its outcome and how it has to be, is the same thing as trying to control something that happened in the past. Neither one of them are going to bring you to a good space. You're just going to get frustrated, and they both are based in fear. Fear of not having this, fear of not being able to get this, fear of whatever, or fear because this happened and I'm angry and upset and I'm going to put myself in a place that can never happen again. Mm-hmm. Well, that's not being vulnerable. Being vulnerable is living in the moment. Being vulnerable is understanding that, yes, this is my worthy ideal. This is my purpose in life. And I know that Source will bring that to me in the way Source will bring it to me, and I'm going to trust that, mm-hmm. whatever it happens to be. Whatever experience you go through, the experience you went through that you talked about earlier, mm-hmm. that's when you accept that. All of a sudden, you open the universe up to allowing to bring it to you in the way that it should be, in the way that it should happen. Bringing you the right people in your life. The people in your life have changed in the last year. Mm. The friends you have changed in the last year. The friends I've had have changed in the last year. As my frequency changes, by acceptance of what is, then it all comes about. I just got on my little pedestal there. Thanks for listening.
No, it's great because I just had all these different gears going while you're talking. Because like what you're saying with, oh, well, there they go. Out the window.
There, big spent.
Wait, no, recap because it was a lot. Like I just had a lot come through.
Well, really it just comes down to this whole forgiveness idea and coming to an acceptance of the situation that person. And it's really unconditional love. That's what true unconditional love is, mm-hmm. is coming to that acceptance. Because if I truly love that person, I don't have to live their life with them, mm-hmm. for instance. But if I truly love them, I'm going to allow them to just go about their life and learn the way they need to learn and experience the things they need to experience and still love them even still. It just doesn't matter. That's acceptance.
Yes.
So.
And what had hit me so hard is we were talking a little bit like about manifesting, creating your own reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've had this huge epiphany lately about just how slow our manifestations are in the third density. They're so slow. And if you could just focus, if your main goal wasn't the house or the car or all the external things, if your main focus was to focus on your frequency, which is how frequently your conscious state can stay at a certain level, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what happens is we start manifesting, and it takes time to show up in this type of density. By the time we almost get to our manifestation, our frequency, we're already dropping our frequency down like into doubt and into, oh, it's not going to work out for me. Oh, am I even worthy of that? Oh, by the time we can't even hold on long enough. The ego can't hold on long enough to a certain state of consciousness. We're getting there for it to even see its manifestation. So if you can focus mainly on your frequency and keeping it at that certain level, which, trust me, guys, I get it. It's really hard to do.
It is.
It is. But if we could just remember and go back to that place, my frequency, what am I manifesting? If you can ask yourself that constantly throughout the day, I do it all the time. What am I manifesting? And I'm like, oh, probably nothing really good right now because I'm kind of in my feels.
Right.
But then we would see more of a rapid manifestation happen because we're consistently staying on that frequency, and the ball gets rolling through energy and momentum, and then it starts happening. I go through this in phases, like you've seen, like where I'm just like boom, 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 like manifestation, and then it's like I start kind of going back down into that hermit phase again and going into doubt and going into these different things, and I got to get that momentum back up again and keep it consistent.
Well, and that's a daily practice, and it's
Yeah.
daily work. I mean, we've gone so long in this matrix and been stuck in this way of thinking for so long that it's really hard to just one day go, well, I've now discovered it's wrong. I believe that it was wrong, and I have this new belief. But you haven't practiced that new belief as long as you've practiced the old belief, right?
Yeah.
So it is hard to stay in. The thing I was thinking about as you were talking, though, is the minute someone thinks about, like, I want this new house or this new car or, those types of things, the minute they really start dwelling on those, they've already told their subconscious self within that it's obtainable sometime in the future. That's why it takes so long to manifest.
True.
Rather than, again, through acceptance, through just letting go, having the belief that it will be, not that it will happen, that it is,
Yeah.
right? And then accepting the way it comes. And it'll come to you very quickly that way. Again, like you said, how do you stay in that mode?
Right.
It's difficult. Things trigger us.
Going back to unity.
Right? Going
We
back
can
to
pull
unity.
this back into unity with the trigger thing.
That's right.
Because to stay on a consistent frequency, we're always going to be triggered, but it's all about the amount of awareness. So if I can get triggered and be so used to practicing the fact that, okay, am I falling down into the illusion of separation right now? Do I believe that these manifestations are actually separate from me and that they're going to come from something outside of me? Do I believe that this person is separate from me and that I need to pull them in? They are me, right? So every little trigger, and I've been doing this a lot lately, like every little trigger I get, I'm like, here I am, believing in the illusion of separation and then acting on it or responding as if it's separate from me.
Yeah, as if you are separate and it's separate from you.
And then I just create more separateness. Right. And it's so annoying.
The minute you say, I want to be that kind of a person, you've created separation.
Yeah.
Because you already are that kind of person. That is you. And people right there, they give you that blank stare, they're like, what? I think the dude's got to lay off the weed. I don't know.
The law of one.
Yeah, or something.
It's the law of one.
And it's a hard one to accept because we are in a world of duality. That we've created this separateness, that you are not anything to do with me and I'm not anything to do with you. We're two separate beings. Or your relationship that you went through was not you, but it was you. And actually, there's a lot of peace that comes with truly understanding that, because I don't have to be angry anymore. I don't have to freak out anymore. I don't have to feel empty anymore. I don't have to, feel anxious anymore. All those things kind of go away as you fall into the soul and realize that's what you truly are, is this divine soul that's just going through experiences to grow from, to learn from. And it's really your soul that's learning. We even say, gosh, what am I supposed to learn then? Well, you are your soul.
Yeah.
Again, we're separating ourselves whenever we do that, because we're creating separation again. But you're not. You're not separate from your soul.
Right.
You are your soul.
Right.
So there is no separation. But I want to talk to my higher self. Well, you are your higher self. You can't talk then,
Yeah.
It's so funny because I catch myself doing that stuff all the time.
Yeah.
I'll sit down to meditate and I'm going, okay, I'm really going to connect to my higher self. Well, duh, you're connected all the time.
Right.
You just are. Why don't you just stay in that mode? Right.
But as a human, I find it comforting when I speak to God or source as if it's separate from me, because my ego is very convinced in this reality that there is separation, even though I'm aware that there is not. The ego wants to go right back into the illusion because that's how it's programmed to do that.
Well, isn't that why we created God in the first place?
Right.
We kind of needed to.
Yeah, exactly.
Our ego
something separate from, to make us feel like we had a relationship with something outside of us that was bigger and grander.
Or had to work into this relationship or live by these rules in order to be accepted, or whatever it happened to be. I mean, we created all sorts of craziness around it. But really, we are. We're already connected. We already are. We're already part of Source. Already.
Yeah, everything.
It's just, how do people stay in that state of mind? I mean, they come to you for coaching, right?
Yeah. Number one.
Number one.
I just think it's just an initial awareness and then going back to that place. And you're not always going to do it. And you probably definitely aren't going to do it when you need it. That's why it's so good to have other people around you that are very supportive in your journey. It's important to create your reality by choosing the types of people that are in your energy complex, right? Yeah. Because when you need that reminder, they're there. I know that there are people in my life, including you, that I need people to say, hey, could it be this? Could it, you know what I mean? And give me a higher perspective. Or I could be around people that are just going to feed into the illusion of separation and pull me farther and farther away from my purpose. And my purpose, just like anybody else's purpose who is on this conscious or spiritual awakening path, is to ultimately be aware of the oneness as much as we possibly can, to recreate a new matrix structure, so that way future generations don't have to be born into an illusion of separation. They can still experience what it's like to look and feel separate from God or from each other or whatever, but they're not under the impression that they're not worthy, that they're not worthy to be loved.
Right.
Like, we want to change that structure. That's what my mission is to just embody as much as I can into this human, because this human is affecting everybody around it and vice versa. So if we can just remind each other, be that friend, be that friend that says, hey, not trying to, hurt your feelings or anything, but could we maybe look at this a different way? Maybe the perspective is this, and kind of help each other see the higher perspective. I think that would make a huge, significant difference in our society if we could be that for each other instead of feeding into the low frequency drama and helping each other just pull down consciously. We don't want to do that anymore. We're over it.
Well, but there's a big push. I mean, the law of polarity is in play here. You have as much on the positive side as you have on the negative side. And the negative side has done a big push. So I really think we see people waking up right now. And I don't think, again, it speaks to the whole plan. Because without that big negative push, without all, this whole women's movement that's really taken it too far, and the way people are reacting to each other and what their beliefs may or may not be, and in the political world and everything else. It's this big negative push. But without that, without creating that, people wouldn't wake up. They would just be stagnant still.
Mm-hmm.
And you see this big movement now of people waking up. That's why this show, that's why you see more people around you that we can talk to, that we can make friends with, that we can stay in a higher frequency with, because of this big negative push that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
The other side has to push equally. It's a universal law, the law of polarity. So it has to happen that way. So it's actually exciting once you put it into that kind of context, because we don't have to look at this crazy world as a crazy world and get fearful of what's going on and, oh my gosh, how are we going to live through this? And I really hate what this is and that is and what they think and, all of that. And they're trying to do that. That negative energy is trying to get you to pick a side, trying to pit you against other people, because that keeps us, separate again. And we're not separate. Absolutely not separate. The other side of that coin is love. That's really what unity is. Understanding the law of one, the oneness is just love. We're now creating a world that's based upon love rather than based upon fear. Fear and separation, love and unity. It's a pretty simple way to put it, but it's very understandable that way. Right?
Right.
We're down to about 5 minutes, just letting you know. So.
I'm just like, my gears are turning too. Like, it'll be interesting as we evolve more consciously, how that, see, it's going to be equal too. So if we evolve consciously more and more and more, then the polarity of that, it's still going to be polarizing.
Right.
It's just not going to be as dark.
Right.
So ultimately it shifts into this new earth, this new conscious state, where it's still a swinging pendulum. It's not just light and love all the time. It's just not as dark.
Well, and it's because the base of the new frequency comes from a different level of frequency. It comes from a love frequency as opposed to a fear-based frequency or a separate frequency. And yes, the law of polarity, the law of manifestation, all of those kinds of things still are at play in this new frequency. It's just your understanding of those things and what's important. No longer is going to school, having to learn these things about the world and physics as important as really going within and learning self first. And it's coming from that kind of a frequency as opposed to an outside yourself frequency.
Right.
Which I'm excited about.
Yeah.
I want to be involved in that as much as possible.
Yeah.
Right.
Me too.
So
Absolutely.
I wish I could just go change everything and be the king of the world. But then what would I be doing? Trying to control everything and it'd be separate again, right?
Yeah.
It's just, it just plays back into that whole thing. You got to let go of that ego part of you, that part that's based in fear, that was trained in fear, that was trained in control, that was trained in narcissism.
Yeah.
Right. And let go, accept, and be love. I remind myself all the time to just be love.
Right.
Because that's the best I can be for anyone.
Right.
Myself included.
Yeah. And it's important as well for the masculine to understand, like, just how much of vulnerability is a strength and a courage. I've been saying this a lot lately, because they repel from it so much. And it's just really, like, I want to leave on that note. Like, everybody just remember how vulnerability is a strength, and we need it. We need it in this world. We need vulnerability in the world because it's a power. It's a strength. You're tapping into your divine power. And that power is going to overrule anything that you think your ego can do for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a healthy vulnerability.
Yeah.
It's, some people get confused. They're like, oh, I need to be vulnerable. And they just go out and they do things to be vulnerable.
Like sob story it up.
Yeah, exactly. Or just tell too much or whatever. That's not what being vulnerable is about. Really, vulnerability just comes down to accepting you for who you are.
Yeah.
That you can't do everything, and that's okay. That you can share that with people that are close to you in your life, and that's okay.
And it's okay to ask for help. We aren't in this to do this alone.
Right.
That's why there's so many of us.
Just because you ride a white horse doesn't mean you're on your own.
Yeah.
You know? So, but I think a lot of men are taught. I was taught that. I remember the first time I cried when I was about 12 years old, really hard in front of my dad. Not the first time, but the first time as I got older. He looked at me and he just said, "Men don't cry."
Right.
So that's programming, right? That we were taught. Programming he was taught that he was passing on to me. Men don't cry. You suck it up, and you just don't let the world know how you feel. Well, you should feel hurt when things that hurt you, right? It doesn't mean you quit. It doesn't mean you
right.
give up and you just let it all out and hope people will come flocking to you and fix it or whatever, or feel bad for you. That's not what it's about. It's like you said, it's okay to not be able to do it. It's okay to need help and ask for help, and that's what we need to do. We're down to about a minute, so tell people how to find you real quick.
Oh, go to Instagram, Carlie Wall or Consciousness with Carlie, YouTube, Consciousness with Carlie, TikTok, Facebook. Yeah, you can find me anywhere. I do one-on-one sessions, so those are available on my Instagram. There's a link in the bio. Very simple, easy.
So it's just a scheduling link they
hit?
hit?
Just a scheduling link. You can just sign, just link it with me, and we can start coaching. And yeah, it's been great, actually.
Awesome.
Really love it. So
awesome. And definitely watch her show, Consciousness with Carlie.
Yeah, we do shows about every weekend.
So once a week.
Yeah.
Once a week coming out. And I know you post a lot during the week, too.
Yeah,
so.
I do.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm Will Miller. You can find me at lifebydesign.institute, and you can just reach me through there anytime. Love and peace, everyone, and have an amazing day.
This has been Spiritual Revolution Radio with Dr. Will Miller. For more information or to be a guest, please visit lifebydesign.institute. Join us next week for another edition of Spiritual Revolution Radio with your host, Dr. Will Miller.